Oh, welcome everyone to our webinar, The People's Demands and What Are We Fighting For? We'll be getting started very shortly, so if you can please hold on with us and grab a beverage, go take a quick break if you need to, so that we can get settled and we'll get right underway in about 2 minutes. But thank you for coming early. These are our early birds for this webinar, so we definitely appreciate all of you coming on with us today. Thank you. We can probably pause the recording too, so you know, have dead space. You need to change your name. Go ahead and change your name as well if you need to. Um, my name's Bev. I'm with the International League of People Struggle, and we are a part of the coalition to march on the Republican National Convention. I'm super excited to have everybody here today with us for our webinar, The People's Demands, What Are We Fighting For? And, if you were out there watching and being completely appalled by the presidential debate last week, you are in the right place here with us. And if it's any consolation to you, the performances of Biden and Trump only underscored that the imperialist ruling classes that they both represent are part of a dying and desperate system. It's a system so weak that these are the best candidates they could put out to try to subdue and deceive us. But we know the realities of our people. We know our people within the US are having a harder and harder time meeting their basic needs, whether it's finding decent jobs that cover their livelihood, with the rising cost of food, utilities, and other goods, or being able to afford stable housing or getting access to much needed healthcare, because our government is too busy doling out billions of dollars in aid and weapons to countries like Israel, where it is committing the most horrific genocide on the Palestinian people, or fueling its proxy war in Ukraine to drive back Russia, or trying to topple the government of independent nations like Haiti, Bolivia, and many countries in Africa. We know through the years under Trump and Biden, their administrations never made any truly significant advances to lift people from poverty or to truly end the economic and climate crises. Instead, they've poured in our taxpayer dollars to massive expansion of overseas bases and military agreements across the globe, massive militarization at the US-Mexico border, and setting up neoliberal trade agreements that attack workers' rights and the environment. On top of all of that, we've seen Trump mobilize his base to actively attack migrants, women, LGBTQ folks, and the right to reproductive health care. We are just 2 weeks away from the Republican National Convention, where we know that the most utterly fascist elements of the US ruling system are preparing to descend upon Milwaukee. The Coalition to March on the RNC has been tirelessly organizing for the past months to counter the RNC and to win its right to a permit to march within sight and sound of the convention. We have two great speakers with us today. Omar Flores is going to start us off. He's going to walk us through the coalition's points of unity and how the coalition is seeking to bring together people from all walks of life to stop the Republicans' racist and reactionary agenda, defend reproductive rights, and demand peace, justice, and equity. Cody Urban will then be introducing the concept of a genuine alternative to the two-party systems policies with the International League of People Struggle, or ILPS, its people's platform. So we're going to be starting off with Omar. He's the co-chair of the Coalition to March on the RNC and is a member of Freedom Road Socialist Organization. Omar began his organizing in Kenosha in 2014 in response to the Ferguson uprisings. He continued his work through founding Milwaukee Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, fighting against police crimes in Milwaukee and in Kenosha. Omar played a central role in combating political repression during the Kenosha uprising, as well as separate cases in Milwaukee and Wauwatosa. Omar, please take it away.
Thank you, Bev, and it's really an honor to be on this panel with so many committed organizers. Yeah, as stated, I'm going to be going over some of the points of unity that we've come up with. The people that are against the Republicans are from like a broad range of places, right? Just because you hate Trump doesn't mean you have like a specific set of politics. It's a pretty wide range, and so these points of unity are sort of like the bare minimum for a coalition for you to be a part of it, right? And we feel like these are like if you're human, like you should be able to agree to these pretty easily, right? And so the first one that I'm going to go over is fight the racist and reactionary agenda of the Republican Party. And this point of unity is extremely important for us, right? Because it's really good for us to name exactly what their agenda is, right? This isn't just an agenda that's like simply a political viewpoint. This isn't something that's like legitimate. It's something that is both racist and reactionary, and it tends to keep our country in a completely backwards mode. Um, Up next, we have defend women's LGBTQ and reproductive rights. What we've seen the Republicans, and honestly, a way that maybe they differ from the Democrats a little bit, is they have really taken a vicious stance against women's LGBTQ and reproductive rights. This has been seen through the overturning of Roe, for example. This has been seen through the insane bathroom bans that have been getting passed, something that completely takes away people's civil liberties. While the Democrats are also like vicious in their repression of people like women or LGBT or reproductive rights, the Republicans have been completely like the most bold-faced form of reaction you could possibly imagine to fight against these rights. And so it's important that for all the viciousness that they show us, that we show up with that same energy against it. A lot of people have sort of mentioned a fear in terms of joining the March on the RNC, right? They're really, with in some cases good reason, have a sense of fear in being able to approach these psychopaths. But the way that we see it is very similar to the way that we would see, just as an example, like the drag kids story times, right? We've had a few of those here in Milwaukee where we had actually received like gun threats, right? That people were going to come up and shoot up the place. And the people didn't say that we're just going to take this and we're just going to step back and we're going to cancel the event, to supposedly keep everyone safe, right? What people did instead is that they showed up in the hundreds and said that, we know that we're strong in numbers. We know that we're the dominant narrative, not the racist and reactionary Republican agenda. We are the dominant narrative. And we said no to that. And ultimately, because we all came out and we all showed up for our community, we managed to keep everyone safe. And so, the March on the RNC is very much an exercise of like that same show of power. It's to say that, we're not going to be scared out of exercising our rights. And anywhere that you show up, you're going to face resistance from us. And so, through the women's LGBTQ and reproductive rights struggle, we've seen this best example. Um, Next, we're going to be defending and expanding immigrant rights. For those of us that are old enough to remember back in like the 2006, 2007, 2008, this was like one of the first like modern waves against the immigrant rights movement. Which again like prompted like really impressive and inspiring protests for immigrant rights. And we see that movement continue today. Whether you're listening to the news or like listening to just like your average Joe, I mean, the sentiments against immigrants is just as strong as it ever was, and possibly some of the worst that we've ever seen in many years. I remember growing up as a kid in 2006, 2007, 2008, and it was always the first thing that people see you as. There's all this fear mongering about like immigrants coming to the country, and unfortunately, we're starting to see that same fear again. And that leads to violence against people. And so it's really important that we defend and expand immigrant rights. Our coalition has plenty of different immigrant rights organizations that have been putting in really good work, and we plan to uphold those organizations. Uh, Up next is a really important point of unity is peace, justice, and equity for all. I think that when a lot of people think about taking on the Republicans' racist and reactionary agenda, we think of things that impact us directly as people living inside the belly of the beast, inside the United States of America. When we say for all, I mean, that's not just, words that we're saying, right? It really means for all. When you look at a lot of the ills that are happening around the world and some of the terrible things that have been perpetrated, the U.S. is usually right dead center of all those things that have been pushed throughout the world. And so, when we're fighting against the Republican agenda, when we all come here to Milwaukee on July 15th, we're not just fighting for our own rights, but we're also fighting for the rights of all the countries that the U.S. Decides to oppress and decides to exploit. And so, recognizing that we are looking for peace, justice, and equity for all, again, it's not just a statement. It's actually it's very political and it's very tangible. And so, yeah, I feel like sometimes, especially in the media, when we say peace, justice, and equity for all, there's a misunderstanding that we're demanding peace. But I think it's important that if we want peace, to name like who is acting against peace, right? And that's always been the United States, whether it's been here in the streets, from these killer cops, for example, or overseas in Palestine, where the U.S. is supporting the bombing of Gaza. And that's just a perfect segue into the next point of unity, which is stand with Palestine. Um, Obviously, we're in a moment where it couldn't be any clearer that we need to stand with our Palestinian brothers and sisters and siblings. There's just no other way around it. Um, you know, like I had mentioned before, we really tried to make this a broad sense as possible, right? I mean, there's plenty of Zionists that don't support Trump and but are still Democrat, right? And there was a lot of back and forth about like how big are this tent are we really trying to make, right? And we decided that in some cases there really is addition through subtraction, right? That that I think we could do without Zionist Democrats, right? We're going to stand with Palestine because it's always been the correct and moral stand. And a lot of organizations in the coalition are going to have different ways of advocating for that. I would say that many organizations under the coalition support an end of all U.S. aid to Israel, because honestly, Israel would not exist if the U.S. wasn't supporting it. And so, yeah, we firmly and with the fullest commitment stand with Palestine, and that's going to be a big aspect of our movement. And just want to give a quick shout out to organizations like USPCN, who have been leading the struggle for Palestinian liberation all across the country, and we're really proud to have them to be joining our coalition. And thank you, everyone, for listening to our points of unity. Unfortunately, because of the position of the coalition and having to appeal to so many different people, I'm really excited for organizations like ILPS to deepen these politics, and give people direction away from nihilism. Like was mentioned before. I mean, the debate pretty awful to watch, right? And I think that if you don't believe we live in a decaying system, I feel like those two candidates really embody like the literal definition of decay. It becomes very obvious to that debate. So again, thank you to ILPS for having us on.
Well, thank you so much, Omar. We are now going to have up Cody Urban. They're the vice chairperson of the International League of People's Struggle, ILPS-US's country chapter, which is a member of the Coalition to March on the RNC. ILPS is a global formation of people's organizations and movements that strive to realize the unity, cooperation, and coordination of anti-imperialist and democratic struggles around the world. With over 350 member organizations spanning 40 different countries, the ILPS is the largest formation of its kind. Cody will be now introducing ILPS's People's Platform, which is a culmination of people's demands for a genuine alternative to the imperialist US government policies to meet the needs of the masses of oppressed and working people in the US and to be in solidarity with the people's struggles around the globe. So after Cody goes, we are going to have Q&A, so please do prepare if you have any questions for us. Cody, go ahead.
Right on. Thank you so much, Bev. And also thank you to Omar. Omar, you gave us and ILPS a shout out for really being able to deepen the political analysis around the opposition to the RNC. But we really gotta give our hats off to y'all and everyone leading the wider coalition to march on the RNC for broadening the political analysis. I mean, it's one thing. I mean, you were saying it yourself. The Republicans are, and especially the modern day Republican Party, this is the most outright fascist face of US imperialism we have ever seen in our generation. I mean, I couldn't think of a more utterly reactionary party of warmongers, of profiteers, of just, people who are laughing as they are pushing everyone into the dirt. I mean, the biggest examples being a lot of the ways that they have just boldly and brazenly stripped women's rights, LGBTQ rights, thrown migrants' rights under the bus. Um, but and we have to rally everyone. We have to rally absolutely everyone. It's so clear that you don't have to be an anti-imperialist to be against these. All you have to do is to believe in human rights, to see the modern Republican Party as one of the most dangerous organizations on the face of the planet. So we really are honored to be a member of the March on the RNC for 2024. So maybe first to talk a bit more about our work. Like Bev said, the International League of People Struggle it's actually the largest numbers-wise anti-imperialist alliance in the world today. Bev mentioned over 350 organizations. We just completed our 7th International Assembly in Malaysia just a little bit more, about a week ago. And at the end of that assembly, we counted just barely under 400 member organizations. And we had representatives and observers of over 500 members join us in Malaysia from all over the world, from well over around 40 different countries. And so you could really feel the power of people from all over the world, people impacted by the foreign policy of both Republicans and the Democrats in so many ways, coming together to push for an alternative. And that's really what we as ILPS wanted to talk about, is what is the alternative? I've even heard some people say that to be so hard against the Republicans is dangerous because the Democrats are the exact same thing. They're the other side of the coin. And if you're throwing down against the Republicans, you're just giving a space for people to vote for the Democrats. And we reject that. You can't just say that if you are opposing one of the parties that the only alternative is going to be people to vote for the other parties. We're throwing down against both parties. We're trying to expose what they really are. And the only way to do that is to show that there's an alternative. And the alternative is not another one you can vote for. An alternative is one that you have to build yourself. And that's what ILPS as a global alliance is trying to do. It's what our US country chapter, that is made up of around 75 member organizations, is trying to contribute to right here in the belly of the beast. The way that we're trying to do that is we're waging a current campaign that's called Defend People's Struggle, because the people are under attack. And when the people are fighting back, that attack back against them increases. People's struggle has never been more under attack. And so we have a national campaign to unite all of our movements together to push and fight for our rights. Because rights aren't something that we ask for, they're something that we win together. And we can only win when we are organized. And currently, when we are in this year, this election year, which might be one of the most important, significant elections I've had, probably the most important election that has ever happened in my lifetime, given the way that the world is right now. The way that we are rallying people around this is through building a people's platform. What is our alternative? So I'm going to talk a bit about how we did this at the last election, because we are in the process right now over these next couple months of actually formulating our people's platform. We are taking inspiration from the one we did at the last election. Now, what happened with the last election is that we all knew almost across the board from people's movements, we could not have another 4 years of Trump. Those 4 years were some of the darkest 4 years in recent US history. Biden came on the scene as almost anyone. Biden came on the scene as like almost anyone could be better than Trump. That was his really only campaign platform. And at the time, we needed some kind of hope. it's clear that many people who were traditionally extremely critical of the Democrats too would get behind Biden because at least there could be something to hope for. Right now, there is nothing else to hope for. We've seen Trump and we've seen Biden. We literally just did this, and the people need something else. And that's why our people's platform for this year is going to be something incredibly important to unite people around. So to talk a bit first, if we can go back 2 slides, about what we did in 2020 is we actually had a project that we gauged from our member organizations. What are the kind of campaigns that they are waging on the ground in their communities? And this was paired with a lot of study, looking at the current state of the United States and what is most impacting people. You know, what is impacting people in their pocketbook? What is impacting people at the dinner table? What are the real gut issues of the masses that are being affected by the Republican and Democrat policies? And we came down to these 5 main demands ultimately. And I'm just going to read them out to you one by one. One is to build a movement to guarantee a truly equal economy. Just like Omar was saying, when we're talking about equity, this is for all. We need to make sure that everyone, like equality is not some abstract thing. It is a very material dimension. That means people have food on the table. People aren't deciding whether they are going to pay for another term of school or go to the doctor. It means people aren't deciding if they're gonna pay for rent or buy food. It means that people have a truly equal economy that they have a say in. I will also say we don't have time to do it today, but this people's platform from 4 years ago also had sub-bullet points that lists out some of the specifics that I'm going through here. 2 was to build a movement to end fascism, state terror, racism, sexism, and all bigotry. Because again, the current Republican Party is one of the most fascist organizations in our generation of US history here. And all of the sexism, xenophobia, white supremacy that is pouring out of them comes from this buildup towards fascism in order to protect, but ultimately protect monopoly capitalism right here in the US and around the world. So we have to fight back against that and how it's impacting people's lives. 3 was to build a movement to improve the quality of life for poor and working people and to protect people's health during the COVID-19 pandemic. This was, of course, in the context of the height of the pandemic, where people were dying every single day. It laid bare just how little the US health system was prepared to meet people's needs and how utterly privatized everything was, in a way that everything was built on what would line the profits of the biggest pharmaceutical companies, to the point that the vaccine was kept away from us for way too long in order for the pharmaceutical companies to make sure that they can make the biggest bang out of their buck. 4 was to build a movement to end imperialist war, repression, military intervention, occupation and sanctions, and struggle for a just peace. So what Omar was saying too is this is not just about people in the US, this is about people everywhere, all around the world. Right now, the people of Palestine are suffering a genocide that is happening in front of us, that we are watching on our TV screens, and it is not stopping. It is only going to stop if we unite with the people resisting in Palestine and show that their struggle is justified. That's the same thing for people struggling against foreign intervention and war and occupation in the Philippines, in India, in occupied Kashmir, in occupied Western Sahara, in Guatemala, everywhere where there is foreign intervention. We need to unite with those people and to actually have a strong anti-war demand around our calls for peace, justice, and equity here in the US. And then 5 is end the plunder of the land and its people, the root cause of the environmental and climate crisis. It's not necessarily just a climate crisis, it's climate imperialism is how we view this. It's because of the plunder of the land that there is so much environmental destruction. And it's because of the thirst for profits from the main extractive industries that there is such plunder of the land. This is also where the largest carbon emissions come from. The US military, in fact, is the largest consumer of carbon emissions. So actually, it fits in this demand for environmental justice actually fits into all the other four demands right here. And you cannot separate the impact on people from the impact on the land and the environment. So this was our people's platform from 4 years ago. Not much has changed. In fact, if you look at this now, almost the exact same thing could be applied to what we're fighting for. What we're trying to do now within our US country chapter of ILPS is we're trying to really gauge at what are the sub points that people are looking to fight for? How has the crisis deepened for people? And what are the main things that people are calling for when they're hitting the streets, or that people are talking about in their communities, in their schools, in their churches, in their workplaces, about what could actually make for a better world? Because this is not just an anti-imperialist platform. This is a platform that has to come from all the people. The people are who we're fighting for and who we're fighting with. And so if we're going to actually provide an alternative to both the Republican and Democrat parties, it needs to come from there. I've been really thrilled to see that the points of unity of the coalition to march on the RNC this year are extremely reflective of what we put in our people's platform. It's really been an honor to be part of this coalition and to join all of our calls together, because all of our organizations in the coalition are fighting for the same thing. Another way that we have worked to develop what could go into a people's platform as well, if you jump to the next slide, was in our national assembly that we had with ILPS-US. We held a national assembly that brought together around 300 of our members in the US to Seattle, Washington, where we had multiple days of panels, of speakers, of workshops that spoke to many of the issues that I just mentioned here, and that are very reflective in the coalition's points of unity. And we finished by actually coming out with a declaration from this assembly, which I'll put in the chat so you can eventually read, or I'm sure Bev would be able to do that perhaps, that synthesizes everything that we talked about at this assembly, and tries to put it into a framework of action. And it all kind of synthesized around our main theme for the assembly, which was fight for our rights, lives, and planet, unite against the dying, desperate US empire. That's why this election is so significant, and it's also why it's such a joke, because it's clear how desperate both the Republicans and the Democrats are becoming. That they do this circus of a debate all the time. And so we wanted to frame it in that if the US imperialist system is dying, if it's on its way out, that doesn't mean that it's going to go out peacefully. It is going to be fighting back to maintain its dominance as the #1 superpower in the world. And that means we have to be ready. We have to be organized to fight if we are actually going to win that new system. And so what came out of this declaration at the very end, and again, you can read the full language in the full declaration, which we'll share in a little bit in the chat here. But we wrote here that we need to fight for our rights to economic, political, social, cultural, and environmental justice against repressive state terror, unjust laws and court proceedings, dismantling of guaranteed livelihood, and terror attacking of activists. Fight for our lives in a society where safety and health is tied with community empowerment and national self-determination against the rise in extrajudicial state killings, sexist and white supremacist mass shootings, and the privatization of food and health systems. And to fight for our planet and a livable future for humanity with the principles of ecological balance and international solidarity against corporate plunder and negligence, mass disinformation, and the denial of science and the weaponization of the climate crisis as a quote unquote national security issue and a justification for corporate capture of green industries. So this is another way that we've tried to lay out a platform and to again lay out that when we're not saying to ask for our rights, saying to fight for our rights. Know your rights and assert them is how we say it in ILPS. Assert your rights by fighting for them. So this is another thing that we'll be talking a lot about as we hit the streets against the RNC in just a few weeks in Milwaukee, is that we need to build a new system by fighting for that new system. I'll finish if you jump to the next slide. I know I kind of already touched on this. By just mentioning we are a proud member of the Coalition to March on the RNC. We're also a proud member of the Coalition to March on the DNC in Chicago in August. But again, like I said before, I think it would be naive to just go out in the streets and talk to everyone who you see and tell them the Republicans and the Democrats are just the same thing. It's true. They represent the same system. They represent the same ruling class. But even though the Democrats are not doing anything to protect women, to protect migrants, to protect LGBTQ people, I mean, their policies have been devastating to working class women and working class LGBTQ folks. And that's the majority of women and LGBTQ folks in the US and in the world. Even though the Democrats have done nothing to support migrants and have secretly been or quietly been funneling a lot more money towards border militarization. They wouldn't be trying to be the champions of women and LGBTQ folks. They wouldn't be trying to look like the champions of immigrants today if the Republicans weren't brazenly stripping away all of their rights and really leading the pack in it. But the Biden administration, in a kind of twist of irony, is the first administration to pass a counterterrorism program that actually names white nationalists as the main terrorist threat of the U.S. Anti-imperialist and people's activists and anti-racist activists have been saying that forever because it's true. So there's definitely something about the Democrats that makes them appear like they are the champions of the people. But they aren't, and we know that they aren't. But we have to understand that they are responding to what the Republicans are leading the way in. And that's why we in ILPS, even though we do work to expose how both sides, both ruling parties of the US, are against the people, we don't shy away from throwing down against them, and we will definitely not shy away from throwing down against the Republicans when we come here. The key is to show that if there's going to be a different system, and if we're going to tell people that neither party is actually standing for their rights, we have to show an alternative. We have to be ready to fight for an alternative. If you jump to the last slide I have here, this is a picture from just yesterday, actually, here in San Diego, which is where I'm in currently right now. This is an effigy of both Biden and Trump as the two-headed evil devil of US imperialism with its hands over the world. This is an effigy that we put right here at the base of the USS Midway, an aircraft carrier parked at the Embarcadero, near the Embarcadero of San Diego, downtown San Diego here. This is one of the most militarized areas on the continental US with military bases here. We threw down here as the Rim of the Pacific military exercise, the largest in the world, have started in Hawaii. In just a few days, we'll be traveling to Washington, D.C. to organize against the 75th NATO summit that is happening there to plan to expand the war machine around the rest of the world too. And it's after the NATO summit that we'll be joining y'all in Milwaukee to throw down against the RNC. So I'm hoping by laying out these examples of what we're doing right now, that this gives an example of how we are trying to rally the people to truly fight for a new system. We're trying to expose every single manifestation of US imperialism by exposing every single policy of the Republicans and the Democrats. And we're going to take it all the way to Milwaukee with all of you in just about a week and a half time, I believe it is at this point. On July 15th, let us get together, let us link arms, and let us talk about what this new system is going to be. Because it's the current system that over all these years has led to this most brazenly fascist Republican Party. Let's bring them down. Thanks, y'all. See you in Milwaukee.
Great. Thank you so much, Cody. We are going to open the floor for questions. So if you have a question, you want to chat that question in the chat, or if you'd like to come off mute, just please raise your hand and you'll be called on. I know there was a few comments earlier when Cody was going over the 2020 platform, but we just went over that one as a sample of what could be for this upcoming year's platform. But if you have other questions or comments that you want to make throughout to our guest speakers here today, please do let us know. And we do have some questions to start us off here, so keep them coming, or unmute yourself. Raise your hand first and then unmute yourself, and we'll also take your hands. But also wanted to note too, if you want to give input on the People's Platform, we are looking for more input. So we'll throw in the chat as well, a link to the form that you can fill out to provide some more feedback to ILPS. But now our floor is open for questions, and the first one we'll take is, so what's really the point of having a platform that neither of these big parties are actually going to take up? So I don't know, Cody, if you want to start off, and if Omar wants to add anything.
We got to take it up. So the whole point of having an alternative platform, we know that it's not going to be implemented by either of these parties. I think that there's two benefits we get from doing a campaign like this. One is we're able to actually give demands. We're going to say to both the Republicans and the Democrats, okay, if you are supporting us, if you stand for us, if you're trying to win our votes, then here's the things we want you to do. And then we're going to see if they listen to us or not. We're going to see if they actually implement it. And my guess, my bet is that they wouldn't do that. And then you're able to further expose them. The other good thing you do is creating a platform is a process. It doesn't just come out of anywhere. You actually have to talk with each other. You have to listen to one another. And I think you have to suspend some of what you truly hold on to in terms of your political beliefs. This is not an ideological process. It's a political process. It's a process of getting down to the mass issues of people that you can't really argue with. And in order to see them, you have to talk with each other. So it's a movement building tool as well. That's the answer I would give to that.
Cool. I'm not sure if Omar, if you wanted to add anything or move on to the next question.
I think Cody covered it perfectly.
Great. Okay, we did have a question in the chat. Any thoughts on the Greens or Cornel West and the Party for Socialism and Liberation? Not sure, Omar, if you want to start us off, or.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, the answer is really no. It's nothing against those parties or those folks that want to put somebody up. I think it's a good effort. However, I think that it's less about like who are we going to elect in, and I think it's more of what are we going to do to get there. I think that no matter who's in office, that we need to be taking direct action. And here in Milwaukee, we've had great examples of that. I mean, we've gotten things passed in terms of like a reproductive justice here in Milwaukee County, when the vast majority of like the county representatives are conservatives. And that's because we showed up to their houses and we told them we're going to keep doing this until you change your vote. We have to make it so inconvenient for them to carry out their agenda that they're going to have to carry out ours. And so, no matter who's in office, that's ultimately what we're going to have to do. It's not the easy answer, and it's definitely not easy to be doing this every day, but it is necessary. And so, yeah, I mean, we get the question a lot in the coalition, and we tell people the same thing, like, let's just get out on the streets and keep it moving.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Omar. It's about how we get there, not who we're putting up, especially when it comes to the presidential race. I mean, this is the White House we're talking about. It takes millions, mostly sometimes even billions of dollars just to get in there. And you're only in there if you're going to want to make millions and billions of dollars and power. We know that, we're not going to ever get the president. The hope I would have from the people who are running is that they have a platform that they can use to help tell us how to get there, that they turn their campaign into a movement. And I actually think that there's a lot of organizers that I know who will sometimes run for local governments. And I think that that's sometimes a much more viable way to do that. If you're running for a local government, sometimes we have comrades that get caught up in the political game, and then we kind of lose track about where we're going. But if it's done in a way that actually it's done as a tactic and not a strategy, and as long as the real strategy is to push for an alternative platform and build a movement, then we're talking. But it's never about actually who we're getting in. It's about what we're building together.
Great. Thanks for those responses. Real sharp analysis there. So let's keep on building these organizations together, building these alliances. Are there any more questions? I didn't quite see
I've got
others in the. Mhm.
So Cody, earlier you mentioned that like marching is just the start, right? And we have to keep building after we march. We have to continue to be active. I'd be curious maybe if you could speak to how people can stay involved with ILPS maybe, and Omar, maybe you can speak to local Milwaukee involvement.
Yeah, well, we'll drop our link tree for ILPS in here. That gives you all the ways to stay involved. We are an alliance of member organizations. So for ILPS in particular, you do have to already be a member of an organization in order for your organization to join and take part. But if you're an individual and you're still interested in getting involved, you can reach out to us and we could try to plug you in to an existing ILPS member organization that is in your area. So that's the biggest way for us. And there's also information about all of our current and past campaigns on that link tree if you look.
And yeah, I'm actually just going to throw our website link in there. If you're interested in joining and you haven't already, or if even better, you have a organization that wants to join the coalition, there is like a join button and you're able to put in your information, whether you're an individual or organization. It'll help you stay in the loop with what we're doing in this, oh my God, like next 2 weeks. So yeah, join us.
Cool. If there's no more questions, I'm gonna go ahead and move us along. Actually, there was another question that was on the 2020 People's Platform, and there was a question if the point on the end the plunder of the land and its people, the root cause of the environmental and climate crisis, does that include oceans and space? So, Cody?
It would. Simple answer, yes.
Yeah, because we're anti-imperialist and we don't want them taking any of that. So we got to fight back. Cool. So yeah, we do really encourage folks to fill out the People's Platform form if you have any input for us. It is something that we really want, once we launch it, to be able to have organizations take it up, take it out to the streets, see if these are really matching the people's demands, because we want people to organize around these things to demand a better world, right? We know that there's a better alternative out there, and we got to keep building our organizations, keep organizing and mobilizing to fight for these things. So with that, we're going to move over to the announcements. I'm going to pass it over to Katie.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you all for being here. My name is Katie. I use they or she pronouns. I'm with the Coalition to March on the RNC. The organization I'm with is Reproductive Justice Action Milwaukee. We organize for reproductive justice in Milwaukee. We are a grassroots organization, and we've been part of the Coalition to March on the RNC for a while now. And we're ready to fight the Republicans here because they keep fighting us. So that's really why we're all out here, right? And yeah, a lot of announcements for the RNC coming up. If you are not in town, we'd love some donations, not to just jump right to the point, but I'm going to because, like Omar said, we're in the final stretch here. We've got about 2 weeks until all of the things start to pop off. So, we need things like water bottles. We've got a lot of security vests and things like that, but bail funds are important as well. So just pretty much everything you can think of for a protest and for thousands of people coming on our city and wanting to keep them safe, as thousands of police also descend upon the city, and evil Republicans. So we need y'all's support. Hope you can also show up to some of our events. But before I get into those, one thing on the fundraiser. Here's our link tree. Oop, let me pop it in the chat. That has, our Cash App link. It has our merch link, our bonfire store. So we've got some great t-shirts. Got mine here. Coalition to March on the RNC, really cool design on the back. Oh, that's blurry. Okay, but you get the point. Great t-shirts. There's tote bags, bandanas. So check it out. We love to see it. Love to see the merch. It's memorable. We'll also be selling buttons, I'm sure, at the event and all the events coming up to it. So yeah, speaking of our events coming up, you're at this one right now, great virtual, but if you're in Milwaukee or Wisconsin or around the area, we'd love to see you in person as well. So this Wednesday, we have our first big event coming up, trivia night at the Sugar Maple. This is July 3rd at 7 p.m. $10 recommendation for donation to join. But yeah, bring a team of people, bring your friends, your family, your buddies. It's going to be a really good time. Sugar Maple's a cute spot too, out in Bayview. So yeah, come on out. And then this isn't on this graphic, but I will also shout it out. Students for Democratic Society at UWM, SDS. They're a member of the Coalition to March on the RNC, and we love supporting our students in their resistance of their campus. So they're having a march to resist Republican cops basically staying on their campus. I think UWM wanted to basically host a bunch of police forces on their dorms, one of their big dorms on campus. So the students are trying to resist that. 5:30 Friday, July 5th at the UWM campus. I think it's at the library from what I saw. Then moving on, sorry, a lot of events coming up, but it's really exciting. The organization I'm part of, Reproductive Justice Action Milwaukee, we are hosting, along with the March on the RNC, we are hosting a Plan C movie screening. So the Plan C is about the abortion pill, and this is a documentary following the creators or founders of the abortion pill and the abortion pill Plan C movement as they travel around the country and just try to promote access and awareness of the abortion pill. Little plug, if you need abortion pills, you can go to plancpills.org. That is a free movie night this Sunday, July 7th at the Cactus Club. Donations recommended as well, but we're happy to see you. We're going to have a little discussion afterwards as well. So Just great to be with people, talking about these issues before we have this big protest as well. Speaking of our next panel, for all of our out of towners and international people, or overseas or over the waters, we are having another virtual panel. This will be a panel on immigration, the national and local movement. This is hosted by the Coalition to March on the RNC. Again, it's free. Next Monday at 7 p.m. So come on out for that as well. Yeah, I posted our link tree and the March on the RNC 2024 for all updates and events. If you're not following us, you definitely should. We've got great content creators on our team right now. We've got some young people. You might have seen Omar doing a lot of press conferences and lives. So, shout out to him and shout out to all our people coming together and really making this happen in Milwaukee. It's really quite the movement, and I'm proud to be part of it. And then I also want to shout out too, before I forget, we do the March on the DNC in Chicago. So that will be in August. So, we get a little break in July after all this stuff goes down, but we're going to be right back at it, marching on the Democrats as well, August 19th and August 22nd. 22nd in Chicago. So come on out for that as well if you can. Would love to see y'all for that as well, because as our panelists have mentioned, it's both parties. They both represent the ruling class and the capitalists. So, all right. Popcorn back to Cody, I think.
Yeah, so I talked a bit about this already, but if you are in the Washington, D.C. area or anywhere nearby and you've got nothing to do this weekend, we are going to have our counter summit and mobilization against the NATO 75th summit that is happening in Washington, D.C. ILPS-US has been a convener of the Resist NATO Coalition. We have a coalition of many different organizations, anti-war organizations, people's organizations, anti-fascist organizations, national liberation organizations that have come together to plan activities around the NATO summit. And so there's a number of different activities that will be happening in town, which is pretty incredible to see how many different people and organizations are organizing against NATO this year. We can never let them get off the hook. This is the world's largest military alliance. It's one of the world's most destructive military alliances. If you want to learn more about NATO, again, that's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The Resist NATO Coalition is actually holding a webinar tomorrow. I believe that it is at 6 p.m. Central Time. We'll drop the registration in the chat if I can find that. But this Saturday, July 6th, we'll be holding a People's Summit from 5 to 9 p.m. at the New York Ave Presbyterian Church, where there'll be a series of panelists and speakers to really tie in all of the issues around NATO's military aggression around the world, how NATO is not just in the North Atlantic, NATO is everywhere, how NATO is not standing for peace, it is a war provocateur, and it is counter-revolutionary to its core. So that will be on this coming Saturday, July 6th, at the New York Avenue Presbyterian Church in Washington, D.C., followed on Sunday on July 11th for a rally and march starting at 12 p.m. at McPherson Park. We're going to have a rally that will have many different agitating speakers talking about the same things that we're saying at the summit. Again, the theme for the weekend is resist U.S. NATO aggression and war provocations, defend people's struggle for rights and liberation. Whichever president wins, we have two of the biggest war profiteers and war provocateurs in the world that are fighting to control the world's largest military. So we couldn't be in that much more of a dangerous military situation as we're almost on the brink of World War III. So join us also at our rally and march on this Sunday. We'll be marching also towards the White House, bringing it right to the head of both the Republican and Democrats' seat of power. So we'll be doing this, and this will be how we'll really get our energy up, get people ready to fight. And from Washington, D.C., we'll be heading right to Milwaukee for the March on the RNC. So again, if you're in the D.C. area this weekend, we hope to see you for the Resist NATO activities. And we also have a Venmo that you can donate to if you're interested in helping our efforts as well financially. I know as organizers, we're often passing the same $20 bill around to each other, but it matters. It matters when we are coming out to support our work, because it's us today asking, it'll be us tomorrow giving, and vice versa all the time. This is how grassroots movement goes. So see y'all there.
Cool. We are going to wrap up our program. Thank you all for all the great announcements of things coming up. And I see in the chat, shout out to David Viegas, going to the March on RNC, and can't wait to see y'all here in Chicago fighting for our lives. Totally. So join us, join David as well. Let's build that movement. I'm going to close out by saying, let's see, I need to grab my sheet here. Not quite letting me open it up. Here we go. Okay. So until we build a new system that truly belongs to the people, we will never have peace, justice, or equity. So we're going to march against the 2024 Republican National Convention, as well as the Democratic National Convention, to expose their true character. But we do so also to rally the people of the US to fight for a true people's platform for genuine social change. So let us continue to build a united anti-imperialist, anti-war movement that fights against wars of counter-revolution and aggression, struggles for a just peace based on social equity and economic justice, and defends the right to self-determination of all peoples by any means necessary, and shut down the imperialist war machine and all of its tentacles. I'm going to pass it to Katie. They're going to close us out with some chants. So get ready to chant, y'all.
All right. Can we popcorn in the next slide? All right, I just want to, I can't believe I forgot this in my announcements, but the March on the RNC is July 15th, Monday, starting at 10 a.m. at the press conference, okay? So come on out for that if you'd like to be there early. Otherwise, speeches and the rally starts at 11 a.m. and we'll be marching at noon. So come on out, everybody. Red Arrow Park, Dontre Hamilton Park if you're local, right downtown by the Pfizer Forum. And then there's the Chicago information as well. They also have an Instagram. Follow March on DNC 2024, March on RNC 2024. We're all in this together. All right. So, I mean, if people don't mind coming off mute, I've never led chants over Zoom. So I'm going to put my faith in y'all. We're going to do a chant that we've been doing for the coalition around here. Yeah, let's maybe stop sharing screens so we can all see each other too. Okay. Gallery view. All right. Okay. So it goes, where will it be on July 15th? In sight and sound of the RNC. Okay, everybody? All right. Where will it be on July 15th?
In sight and
sound of the RNC.
All right, one more. Where will we be on July 15th?
In sight and sound of the RNC.
Woo!
See you in Milwaukee. See you in Chicago. See you in DC. Thank you all for coming tonight.
See you in 2 weeks.